We have to start with an independent investigation of Donald Trump. That's the first step before we go anywhere, is to find out exactly the relationship between Trump, the Trump campaign, and a hostile foreign government. Look, a full investigation may turn out to mean there's nothing there, or a full investigation may mean there's been criminal activity. But either way, every American, Democrat, Republican, Independent, everybody should care about getting the right answer. We need a special prosecutor, and we need him now.
A few years later.
Way. And chances are this DOJ has every single email, every text message, every communication. I believe likely he will be found guilty.
Oh, well, that's interesting because
I think he likely committed a crime.
Wait, what?
Boy. So we got to talk about the liberal media outrage over James Comey, the former disgraced FBI director, being charged with making false statements and obstruction of a congressional seating after being indicted by a federal grand jury. Now, we have to follow up on the liberal media outrage because the liberal media has been exposed once again for their clear and overt hypocrisy when it comes to how they reacted when President Trump was facing charges due to the weaponization of the DOJ by the Biden administration and also Democrats at the state level. Okay, they weaponized the government to go after President Trump. They told us, no. See, you don't understand. This is not weaponization. And the reason why is because we have this whole system in place, a grand jury system, a trial system, and that is what prevents the system from being weaponized, right? So it's okay for the DOJ to clearly go after President Trump, again, because he is the enemy of Democrats, of the people in charge of the country. That's totally fine. It's totally okay because the system is going to work out in a way in which if he is guilty, then he'll be found guilty. But if he's not guilty, then he'll be found not guilty, and it doesn't matter. Now, for whatever reason, that same logic to brush aside claims of weaponization when Biden was in the White House and when Democrats were in charge, now all of a sudden that doesn't work anymore.
He seems to be kneecapping his own prosecutors here.
Well, look, that's the thing. There's a system, and the system includes grand juries and juries of ordinary Americans who get in a room and make decisions. He can't order people to be indicted, and he can't order people to be convicted. He can express his opinion. In the case of Comey, grand jurors in a very liberal jurisdiction got together and decided that the evidence did warrant charges. Comey will go to trial, and then a jury of his peers will decide whether he is guilty or not. The president can't do anything about that. He can make commentary on it. I'm not sure if it's wise or not wise to do that or if it will matter at all. But ultimately, I'll just say what Jim Comey said when Donald Trump was indicted. It's a good day for the rule of law because we have a system, and the system is in place, and the system is working as it was designed, with average, ordinary Americans making decisions about how our laws will be enforced.
But you know, you said that he can't actually order the indictment of someone. I think he just proved that he could. I think what he did, the series of events that took place here, we have to actually be clear about what happened, right? He tried to pressure Eric Siebert at the Eastern District of Virginia to pursue this prosecution. He did not. The U.S. prosecutors there said they did not see enough evidence. So he forces him out. He publicly declares to Pam Bondi, you need to target these political enemies, specifically labeling James Comey. And then, right after that, installs Lindsay Halligan, a former insurance lawyer with no prosecutorial experience, to go in there. And then within days, Comey's indicted, even after rank and file prosecutors, they gave her a declination memo that said, this is why we don't think there's enough evidence. So I don't think this is just the process playing out. I think this is Donald Trump explicitly abusing his power and directing a prosecution of a political enemy.
You said we have to be very clear about what happened, and then you left out the most critical part, where a prosecutor has to go into a grand jury, present the evidence, and make the case why charges are warranted. And the grand jury has to agree with that. In this case, they did. Now, I don't know if he'll be convicted or not, but you can't leave out and deny that there's a critical step where average, ordinary Americans get put in a room and they ultimately have to decide, does a case go or does it not go? And then they will decide whether you're guilty or whether you're not guilty. That is an important part of the process that he cannot really alter or change. I'm stunned to hear you say we're now worried about normalizing this kind of thing. We had an attorney.
You are about to do right now. Let's hear it.
I'm about to tell you what happened in the state of New York when the Democratic Attorney General ran an entire political campaign promising promising not to uphold justice, but to prosecute one person, Donald Trump. And I didn't hear a lot of weeping and gnashing of teeth among Democrats about normalizing the weaponization of justice. That chart you put up there, my question is, do they deserve it? If they didn't do anything wrong, I'm not certain anything bad's going to happen to them. Bolton, that started under Joe Biden. James, I mean, these people that you put on the screen, they may have something that needs to be looked at. But don't you have trust in the processes, grand juries? This is how the system works, and I don't have any. And Jim Comey, he's going to go to trial.
I think it's the abuse.
He's going to get a day in court in front of a jury of his peers.
It's the abuse of the system, and what we're talking about is the abuse of the system.
What abuse beyond the idea of prosecuting people when Democrats were going after Trump? Were you worried about abuse?
Because I firmly believe that Donald Trump broke the law and he was indicted.
Do you think the 34 charges that are cited all the time were good charges?
But let me just say this. I mean, you just sat here and talked about the process. You gave me a lecture about the grand jury system. Well, Donald Trump actually went to trial and got convicted.
Correct.
That is the process he went through. And let me just explain to you the difference in the abuse and the difference in departments of justice. I mean, we can go all the way back to Republicans having a fit when JFK tried to nominate RFK, his brother, to be Attorney General. But I can actually go back to Joe Biden. Joe Biden indicted his own son. Did he deserve to be indicted? Yes. But he indicted his own son.
You're saying the White House was directing. You're saying the White House was directing indictments.
But
You're saying they were directing indictments. That's a revelation.
Just have one person speak at a time. What were you just saying?
Yeah. So you see, now you heard that. Okay, I want you guys to understand what I've been hearing in the mainstream liberal media as to why is it that they did not care at all when Letitia James and Alvin Bragg were running around, literally campaigning and going after President Trump, right? Weaponizing the system against the former president, okay? When the Biden DOJ weaponized the DOJ against President Trump. Well, hey, ultimately, we believe that Trump was guilty, right? Trump was guilty, so, hey, it's okay because we believe that he's guilty, so therefore investigating him, right? Investigating your political opponents is okay when we do it because we believe that our political opponents are guilty, right? But when it happens to us, it's not okay because we don't believe that our political allies are guilty, right? We don't believe they're guilty. So therefore, it's not okay for you to investigate us. And the grand jury indictment doesn't mean anything because it's easy. It's super easy to get an indictment, right? You can indict a ham sandwich, right? Again, none of this logic that they're using now, okay, applied when Democrats were in power, right? They were telling us that, no, because of the system, because there's a grand jury system, okay, a jury of his peers, they said that, hey, the prosecution's evidence warrants this potentially going to trial, right? Because of that, that means that the system is not weaponized. And don't worry about the costly legal expenses that President Trump had to go through in order to fight these charges. No, don't worry about that. That's just what the part of the process. You just got to do it, right? Now all of a sudden they're concerned about Comey having to go through this expensive process of defending himself in court.
Maybe Comey will end up walking away from this, but this will still be expensive. It will be stressful. It could ruin Comey's life for a time, and it seems to be foreshadowing if Comey's now, who could be next?
Right. I think that's the punishment. It's the punishment. James Comey has to have expensive lawyers now, and it'll take a lot of his time and emotional investment. Theoretically, his liberty will be at stake in this case, and that's what. Look, the Justice Department, a federal indictment is nothing to sneeze at. It is a life-changing event, and this is clearly punishment directed at James Comey. I mean, it couldn't be more explicit because that's what Donald Trump demanded in so many words in that message to Pam Bondi, the Attorney General. I mean, I've never seen anything like this. It's basically saying, go indict this guy. Find something to indict this guy on.
Yeah, so again, I just found how none of this stuff applied to President Trump when he was going through this same process. None of these people care. None of these people care when President Trump's allies were going through the same process. All of these people made the argument that, again, grand jury did it, therefore it is legitimate. The investigations are legitimate because they may have committed crimes. We believe they committed crimes. So, hey, we need investigations. Investigations are totally warranted, right? But now all of a sudden, the roles are reversed, right? Or they perceive the roles as being reversed, and they want to cry foul, right? I just find this to be absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating, okay? Now, these people, again, are assuming that Comey is not guilty. They're coming out here and they're claiming that it is likely that Comey is going to be found not guilty. But Michael Cohen, who is Trump deranged, right? He's an anti-Trumper. He's pumping the brakes, right, on this idea that Comey is not going to be found guilty. And of course, the MSNBC panel didn't like this very much because Michael Cohen is the same guy who basically said that Letitia James and Adam Schiff also will be found guilty as well too, eventually, once they are charged and prosecuted for their crime.
Look at what he's doing right now, for example, with Tish James. Look at what he's doing with Adam Schiff. And I'm going to make another bold prediction here on
a lot of predictions at 8 o'clock in the morning.
There's a lot of here. Take these notes because, mark my words, politically, they're both doomed. All right? I'm telling you right off the bat, this is a political suicide for both Tish James and Adam Schiff.
More of a political homicide.
Well,
they
yeah,
didn't do anything wrong.
but how are they going to be? How are they politically doomed if Senator Schiff comes from a blue state? Attorney General Tish James is here in a blue state. They are elected by the people. How are they doomed politically?
It'll be gerrymander. It will end up being somehow. They will end up being held
races.
Yes, but they will also be held accountable. Mark my words, they will be held accountable for the crimes that they are now looking at. That's Ed Martin who's looking at him. And I know so many people are going to say, oh, my God, Michael Cohen is like bending the knee to Trump. No, what I'm doing is I'm actually telling you the reality.
So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it.
Do any of us actually really know whether or not Comey is or is not guilty of the charges? I know that they parade out all of these pundits. They have the great titles in the Chiron, former prosecutor, yada, yada, former FBI. Who's seen a single document that's in the possession right now of the DOJ? The answer is nobody. Right. Who has the crystal ball? Still nobody. I will tell you from my investigation, which I used Brian Karem, who's a 30-year White House correspondent, to speak to people inside government because they wouldn't talk to me. I've learned that Comey was actually very much involved in the Russia investigation in a very negative way. And chances are this DOJ has every single email, every text message, every communication. I believe likely he will be found guilty.
Oh, well, that's interesting because
I think he likely committed a crime.
Wait, what?
I believe likely he committed a crime. I don't know what that crime is, but there are hundreds of thousands of documents, and government has each and every one of them. All they need to find is that one. And remember, see, James Comey, when he was the head of the FBI, he was so used to punching down. Well, now you have the FBI that's going to be punching up. I've been through this system. I know better than anybody what a weaponized DOJ looks like and feels like. It is insurmountable.
Didn't you actually break the law, though? With Stormy Daniels and the payment?
Well, it was a campaign finance violation. Is it any different than, for example, John Edwards?
Yeah, but isn't that what the law is supposed to do?
Let me say I did. I pled. I pled also under some very extreme circumstances. My entire case didn't last like everyone else's. It was 48 hours. Either from a Friday to a Monday, either I plead guilty or Southern District of New York was filing an 80-page indictment that included my wife. So before we get into
don't have to relitigate.
right, yeah. we could relitigate the whole thing. But I believe that Comey likely will be found guilty.
Wow. That might be one of the greatest clips I've ever seen on MSDNC, right? On BS Now. Those panelists were stunned, right? They were like, what? What you really said on our network airwaves that you think that Comey is going to be found guilty? They just couldn't believe it, right? They were stunned because, again, the talking point on that network is supposed to be, no, you don't understand. There's no chance that Comey will be found guilty. He didn't commit a crime, right? That's the psyop that these people are trying to play on the American people, which is that, hey, this is illegitimate because there's 0% chance that Comey will actually be found guilty. But as Michael Cohen laid out, we don't know what evidence the DOJ has. We don't even know if this is it in regards to what the DOJ is going after Comey for. So that leads me to this reporting here from Catherine Herridge, who is an actual real journalist, right? One of the rare journalists still out there, right? This is why she's no longer at CBS, because her journalism wasn't propaganda, right? And because she's actually reporting the real facts, okay? That is why she was let go. So again, let's read some of her reporting, because she's saying that, hey, this is likely not the end for Comey here. She says, quote, "I understand the indictment was ready to go. I am told all the evidence was there, not a, quote, shaky criminal case as characterized by some media reporting. Critics of former U.S. Attorney Eric Seibert allege he was blocking or slowing down the charges. Interim U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan removed the blocks. Key factor, FBI Director Kash Patel declassified FBI leak investigations, codenamed Arctic Haze. Revealed Comey's role authorizing media leaks. At least one involved classified information through his FBI subordinates or through his Columbia Law School professor Richmond with SGE, Special Government Employment Status. This is old news if you follow me and subscribe." Now, she also went on to say, more to come on Comey. "Based on my 2 decades covering FBI and the Department of Justice, a thin indictment suggests a holding charge with the potential of a more complex superseding indictment that adds more charges. This is not only possible, but plausible in Comey's case based on the recently declassified FBI leaked investigations via Director Kash Patel, codenamed Arctic Haze. The Arctic Haze records reveal several FBI senior leaders and Columbia Law School professor Daniel Richmond said they coordinated media leaks at Comey's direction." Yeah, so what she's saying in a nutshell is that based on these declassified documents, this is evidence that can be used to suggest that, yes, Comey did lie, right? And on top of that, he did coordinate the leaking of classified documents, and that more charges superseding indictment could happen, right? And that, hey, these are just holding charges. And I believe that's probably the case because of the statute of limitations, right? So, I mean, that's, I think, what's going on here, right? That's kind of what it sounds like to me. And then she goes on to say, here's part of the Comey story no one's talking about yet. A classified spill is when intelligence is mishandled, plus outside secure government channels or facilities known as SCIFS potentially implicates Columbia professor Richmond and others over Comey sharing his Trump memos.
Amazing exchange to me is when you had Director Comey confirm that he shared those memos documenting conversations with the president with 3 other people. So the Columbia professor, that's what he testified to, also what he described as his personal attorney, Patrick Fitzgerald, and then this other attorney. What's key here is that he told you, Brett, that those memos were returned to the FBI after they found classified information. He can call it whatever he wants. That is a classified spill of information. Doesn't matter whether they have clearances. They didn't have the ability to secure that information.
Sure.
Wow. Again, shout out to the real journalists, right? Very few of them out there, okay? So basically what she's saying here is that, look, there's more to come, right? Like this is not the end, right? Of what's going to happen to Comey. And that's why all these people in the mainstream liberal media, all this boohoo on the crowd, oh, this is illegitimate, blah. No. This dude, there's good reason to believe, actually committed a crime. And here's the reality that they're afraid of, right? Is that with all of the resources that the government has at its disposal, right? And considering the fact that James Comey actually worked for the government, there's good reason to believe that they will find something, right? They're going to find something that will be enough to convict James Comey, right? And that's what these people are afraid of, because they probably have this type of information on a lot of Democrats, right? A lot of people, okay, who worked for the FBI or worked for the Biden administration. Of course they have the information, okay? Of course they got all the dirt on these people. And that's what they're afraid. That's what they're so mad about, right? So again, a lot of what you're hearing in the media about how, oh, Comey's not really guilty, blah, blah, is all cope. Is all cope and it's propaganda to mislead the American people about what's happening here. What they told us is that nobody's above the law. If a crime was committed, or it was possibly a crime that was committed, then there should be investigations, there should be charges, and there should be a trial. If he's found guilty, then hey, he's found guilty. If he's found not guilty, then it is what it is. But apparently that only applied to Trump, right? Now when it comes to Democrats, right, and their allies, okay, well, now all of a sudden all that stuff goes out the window, okay? Because, again, there is reason to believe that Comey is guilty and that more is going to come, right? Like, this is not the end in regards to what they're going to throw at James Comey. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.